You know, we did a big long discussion last week with Zach Hughes about sight fishing, and you know, Ronnie told you guys earlier, man, I love to sight fish. I do a bunch of it, and it is what I'm probably doing most of my trips right now. You know, the deal about sight fishing is you can kind of pick the fish you fish for, and I can drive past 2-pounders and fish for 5+ pounders all day. And if I only catch 10 fish, but they're all over 4 or 5 pounds, customers usually go home happy. Sight fishing allows me to do that, so I do it a lot. But there are some other things that we are doing a little bit, and it's kind of like what Ronnie was saying. We're bed fishing without looking at them, without sitting there looking at the fish. There's a little more to it than that. It's not just bed fishing. You're catching some of these fish that are coming and going as well. The fish that aren't on the beds yet, the fish that are already off the beds, especially the bigger female fish. And this deal right here correlates so well to the shad spawn. What's up, buddy?
Keys.
You need my keys?
Yeah. Somebody lock me in.
They're right there behind you in that office on the table. This deal correlates to the shad spawn really well. And as the shad spawn continues to move on, and you start getting that shad spawn on the wind-blown main lake points, and even as more shad start spawning in the grass, they'll kind of spawn over the middle of a ditch or a drain in a heavy grass flat. You'll see them start to boil a little bit in the morning time. When you see that, last year was my first year fishing it this way that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. It was unbelievable the amount of fish and the amount of big fish that we caught last year on this, and we're already catching fish on it this year, a little bit here and there. And we'd catch a lot more on it if I'd fish it all day, but I don't. I go to looking at them. But the Smash Tech hollow body swim bait, and a lot of times you can say, like Ronnie said earlier, you can have this frog or that frog or whatever. Most of the time when you're talking about technique, we'll have our preferred bait, our preferred brand, but there's several that'll do the job. It's kind of not the case with this one right here. First, I'm going to talk to you guys about, kind of the differences of the bait, how I'm rigging it up, why this bait's different than other hollow bellies. We're rigging it weedless. And there's two sizes. There's the 4-inch right here, and there's the 6-inch. And this is a true 6-inch hollow belly. That Bass Tricks, they say it's the 7-inch hollow belly. That sucker's 6.5, 6 1/4. This is the same bait, but it says 6-inch, so people don't think this is a big bait, and it catches giant fish. But anyway, 4-inch and 6-inch, rigging it weedless, which is kind of the different deal. Traditionally, hollow bellies it wasn't popular to rig hollow bellies weedless. And the reason why is because they're hollow, and there's not a lot of plastic there, and they're very, very soft. And they would tear up very, very easy. Well, Mr. Taylor has gone and do what he does best. He took a known bait, tweaked it, made it better in his own way for what he wanted it to do, and that's what you've got here. You got a little thicker, denser plastic. You got a little bit heavier. We'll pass this around. This bait's got some weight to it. Just the plastic alone has some weight to it. The big deal, though, is the head. The head is a lot denser, thicker plastic than the other hollow bellies that you'll find. And what that does is two things. It makes the bait a lot more durable. It makes it hold that screw lock extremely well. This bait, you guys will be able to look and see how chewed up and beat up this bait is. We've caught a lot of fish on this one bait. We haven't replaced it. It's dirty, it's nasty looking. It just been chewed up, spit out right around the deck of the boat for about a week now. That's just how much they last. But the other thing that it does that's really kind of unique too is that extra density and heaviness in that plastic in the nose causes the whole body, and all hollow bodies will have kind of a body wiggle. Not like this one. This thing, literally, it almost feels like a chatterbait on this big one. This 6-inch, when you're reeling in, you can feel the vibration in your rod tip on a swim bait. Totally different look, totally different feel, a whole lot more drawing power from all that vibration. The whole body's just wiggling violently as you reel it in, and it draws attention and draws bites from some of the biggest fish you can imagine. Who here has seen the video or heard about the 13-year-old kid caught a 12-pounder with me last year? Most of you guys have. Well, that's the exact hook and bait it was caught on right there. We had it was 2 to 3 weeks. I can't remember exactly how many days in a row it was, but it was 2 to 3 weeks worth of every single day. I had a pocket where fish were spawning in, and we'd start in the mouth, and it had a little pinch down, a little condensing area kind of halfway in the pocket. And as those fish were pulling out or pulling on, or some of the females weren't on the beds, they were kind of out, they would kind of condense in that area. And we would start our morning there, and we would usually get at least 2. We'd always get 2. Sometimes we got 3, but usually 2 bites per morning on this big light hitch hollow belly. Every single day for that period of time, 2 to 3 weeks, we caught 1 fish under 7 pounds on this bait. 1 fish. And it was 5. And we caught a 12-pounder on it. So that's a pretty good way to know you're going to start your day. Hey, if we go over here and we throw this hollow belly in this drain long enough, we're going to catch 2 fish over 7 pounds, maybe 3. Like, that's a pretty good way to get your day started. I am not, Ronnie and a lot of other guides out here are much better at catching numbers of fish. I'm not. I don't know if it's because I started fishing tournaments before I was guiding. I watched Bassmasters too much growing up. But the only thing that goes through my head at the end of the day is what was my best 5. I don't even know how many I caught. Almost very rare will I'll tell you, yeah, we caught 17 fish today. I don't know. We might have caught 10, we might have caught 30. I don't know, but I know what my best 5 was every day. And that's just how my brain measures it. So the way that I fish, and when I take customers fishing, I feel like most people are coming to Lake Fork trying to catch a big fish. And so I'm really trying to catch the biggest 5 fish I can every day. When you can start the day off with 2 or 3 over 7, you're on your way, folks. You know what I'm saying? So that's just a little validation of the bait. But rigging it on an 8/0 owner beast hook, belly weighted hook. This bait has so much wiggle, you got to have some weight. I never throw it on a weightless hook with tape. It's too much pull, too much action. It won't run right. It won't act right without that weight on there. That weight helps it get that vibration too. So always throw it on an 8/0 belly weighted owner beast hook. The 4-inch one, 4.5 inch version, I throw on a 5/0 belly weighted hook. And a lot of times, most of the time, I like to throw it on a flashy swimmer. Everybody know what the flashy swimmer is? It's a little weedless hook. It's got a little blade underneath it that spins, a little willow blade. This bait's got so much action to it, I feel like it doesn't hurt to just add a little more. I don't think it draws anything away from it. Yes, sir?
Well, when are you switching to the hollow body from the solid?
Okay. As we discussed the action in this bait, and that's the other thing. When the water's cooler, when the water's in the 60s, the lower part of the 60s and the 50s, we start throwing them swim baits like the poacher or the convict. And if the deal with that poacher and that convict is you throw it out there and you go like this. And it just goes about this fast, but it goes. The tail just kicks at a real slow speed. This doesn't, but it has such a different action, an erratic action, that as the water heats up and everything in the water, all these fish are cold-blooded, bait fish, game fish, all of them. As the water heats up and everything starts moving faster in the water column, I like that hollow belly. To me, it's too fast of an action in the cold water. I think there's some fish that just won't chase it down because it's like going crazy when nothing in nature is going crazy at that time. But when things in nature start going crazy and shads start spawning and their metabolism starts running and everything's moving faster, that's when the fast action of the hollow belly kicks in for me. And that's usually when you get close to that 70-degree mark. At 67, 68, when your morning temps are like above 65, when your morning temps are 67, 68, which is what we've had going on here lately, or even above 70, that's when I start throwing the hollow belly. And I'll throw it. It's the best time of year to throw it is from right now till about early June, mid-June. But I'll throw it all summer. As long as the water temps are high, I always have this bait ready to go. Now, as we get into the heat of summer, there's different things that work a little better. But there are days that time of year when I do absolutely throw that. Okay, so we talked about how we rigged them. Let's talk about rods and reels and lines. Here, I'll just pass this around. You guys, I need these packages back. I haven't purchased them, so please give those back to me. But there's one rigged up that's all dirty and nasty and beat up.
Here's belly weight. There's on that.
Well, with the owner beast, all the belly weights coming. There's only one option. I think that one's 3/8, but I'm not sure. But it's just the 8/0 belly weighted. There's only one size.
Okay.
There's not like an 8/0 quarter ounce and an 8/0 3/8 ounce. Like, it's just one size weight on that 8/0. All right, let's talk about rods and reels for these swim baits. On that 4.5 inch, it's real simple. You can kind of throw that. It's a light enough rig. It's basically that 4.5 inch hollow belly is just like a souped up steroid version of a spinnerbait. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a more weedless, more natural, cooler, newer version of a spinnerbait in how it functions and how it fishes. You can throw it on the same rod, you know, like a 7-foot medium heavy or a 7.3 medium heavy. If you want to throw it on a heavy rod and you can cast it, go ahead. But you just kind of chunk and wind that thing. You don't need any kind of big special rod or nothing. You can go 6/8 gear ratio reel. It's just a normal moving bait. You know, you don't have to do anything special gear-wise. Now, out here, I like to throw them, both of them on 20-pound fluorocarbon, 20-pound line, just because when I hook into one of these big fish around this shallow cover, I want to be able to control him, you know, instead of getting him hung up around a stump or in that grass. They get you in that grass, you're kind of in trouble. So, now the bigger one, though, with that 8/0 hook, you need a bigger rod to drive him home. Also, with that bigger bait weighing more, and you can make super long casts with it, you need a reel that's going to let you make super long casts. A lot of these reels just don't have the line capacity, especially with 20-pound fluorocarbon. They don't hold enough line for you to cast that big hollow belly to its potential. And why wouldn't you want to cover as much water as you can with a bait like that? You know what I'm saying? So the setup's pretty important. This is my medium to big size swim bait setup. Not my super big swim baits. You know, my 4 and 5 ounce hard baits, I got a different setup. But for my convicts, my poachers, and this big hollow belly, this is my setup. It's an 8-foot heavy action rod with a moderate fast tip. It's got a little bit of tip there, but not a lot. I mean, it's an 8-foot heavy rod, so it's important to have a big beefy rod when you're trying to drive an 8 or 10/0 hook into a fish's head. Especially these bigger fish got a lot of bone in their head, and Lord forbid you got to drive that 8 or 10/0 hook through a bone. You better be swinging a hammer. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we use such a big, heavy rod. That's important. Also, the 8-foot rod, again, helps you make even longer casts, and that's a benefit. That's a good thing. One thing I want to talk to you about that's real important is your reel for your bigger swim baits. This is an important deal. Most people think, you see these big swim baiters, and they'll have these reels that are like that big around. They got all this line on them. Man, I hate those. I hate them. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're so uncomfortable. They're so bulky. They're so heavy. And when you fish every single day, if you're throwing that all day, you're going to wear your joints and muscle. You're going to be tired. You're going to be sore. Luz has done a great job of creating a reel that's comfortable, reasonably light. It's not the lightest reel on earth. It's not. It's a little bit heavier. It's 7 or 8 ounces, so it's just got a little weight to it. You know, the lightest reels you're going to find are going to be, your super light ones are going to be down around 5 ounces. You know, 5 point something. Anything in the 5s is considered a super light reel. A lot of your better reels will be in the 6 ounce category. This one's, I think this one's either 7 or 7. I think it's 7.9 ounces, something like that. So it's not just super light, but what this is the Luz Super Duty LFS, which I think that stands for light frame something or another. I don't know what this is, but it's the Luz Super Duty. It's their newest Super Duty. It's called the Luz Super Duty LFS. And it's really kind of designed for like punching and, you know, hard hook sets, maybe frogging. I like a light reel on frogging, so I don't use it for that. But what it's great for, it may be to me the best of all time as far as a reel goes for bigger swim baits, because it has a huge line capacity. But it's the only reel, or it's the first reel, the most comfortable reel I've ever put in my hand that holds enough line where I can cast this thing from here to that boat ramp down there and I don't run out of line. And sometimes you can cast it from here to the boat ramp down there with them big swim baits and an 8-foot rod. So you've got a reasonably light reel, really comfortable, fits in your hand right, but it does what it needs to functionally to be a good big swim bait rod. Does that make sense? So can't tell you enough how important that reel is for me for big swim baiting when I do it a lot. Anyways, so that's the setup. Areas, anywhere they're spawning. Anywhere they're spawning, we're right out in front of it. You know, especially with the big one, I really throw the big one on secondary points or pinch points, funnel points, right kind of at the front half of the spawning pocket. So if I go into an area and I know there's some fish spawning there, or I think there's some fish spawning there, it looks like a high percentage area, the water temp's right, it's got some grass, it looks like a great spawning area, right? We've got about 1.7 million of them out here on this pond right here. If you find that area, pull just out from it, find your first couple secondary points in there, or if there's an area where that whole cove makes a funnel point, that's the ideal area to start your morning with that big 6-inch smash tech hollow body. And don't expect just a tremendous amount of bites. You're dealing with lethargic fish that are oftentimes coming off a bed or just kind of in a staging mode, fixing to get on a bed. Maybe they're on a bed right now, but some of them big fish, they don't stay on the bed 24/7. They'll pull out overnight, and then as the afternoon wears on, they'll get on the bed. These are the fish you're going to catch on that big hollow belly, and that's why they're so big. You're catching these big females that are out there at the mouth. Now the little one's great because the little one, the 4.5 inch, you can take that sucker where they're bedding and do just like the frog and make a long cast where they're spawning and just kind of point at it and go like this, and you'll catch them. The fish will come out there off that bed, just knock fire out of it, and you'll catch them. So the little one's a great search bait. You'll get a lot of bumps. On swim baits in general, they'll hit it real hard and not eat it. So you'll be reeling and you'll just get boom, and there'll be nothing there. Like that happens on swim baits a lot. I don't really know why they do that. They follow them a long time, they nose punch them, and they don't eat the bait. That's just swim baits. All I can tell you is what I tell all my customers. When you throw in that swim bait, point the rod right down the line and reel. When they hit it, just keep reeling. Because a lot of times they'll hit it and they just won't have it. So just keep reeling. And even when they do hit it, just keep reeling. Because when they do hit it and eat it, they will often knock a whole bunch of slack. Like as much slack as you will ever get knocked in your line on any technique, the swim bait deals the most. So just keep reeling. If you feel wham and you keep reeling, you start feeling a little weight, you drop the hammer and swing it hard. The other thing that'll happen on swim baits, especially the bigger swim baits, is sometimes you'll be going along and you'll feel that boom and they won't have it. And then all of a sudden they'll hit it where they knock slack in the line, but they got their directions messed up and they're hitting it going the other direction. So instead of slack getting knocked in your line, you almost lose your rod. Like you'll have the what we call in every guide and fisherman that fishes swim baits all the time knows this. If you fish swim baits a lot, it's the self-defense hook set. You set the hook out of self-defense, and you're reeling, and you go boom, and he hits it, and he doesn't have it, and all of a sudden you're like they jerk your pole down, they hit it so hard going the other way, you're just re-grabbing it, trying to hold onto your rod. That happens a lot on bigger baits, a lot. So be ready, like hold on to that reel, you know what I'm saying? Because they will jerk on it real hard. Then here in the next, I don't know, we've got a cold front coming tomorrow or something, so it may not happen in the next week, but sometime real soon, especially as that water gets up in the 70s consistently. Start looking for these herons on these points, these wind-blown points. Everybody know what a blue heron is? Everybody? You got the white egrets, you got the blue herons. They're both crane birds that sit there and stab minnows and shad. Look for the blue ones, the gray ones. The white ones, don't pay no attention to them stupid white birds. And sometimes the whites will be mixed in with the blues. That's fine, as long as the blues are there. Them white ones will kind of eat anything. They'll eat those little glass minnows, little stuff that sometimes bigger bass aren't really targeting. But those herons are going to eat bigger bait. They're going to eat gizzard shad. They're going to eat brim 99.9% of the time. So especially if you see multiple herons on a wind-blown point or a wind-blown clay bank or something like that, you got to stop. If you don't stop, you're making a big mistake. When you see that, you stop because maybe you go in there and you don't catch anything. But I can't tell you how many times that you see 3 or 4 herons lined up on a wind-blown area, point or clay bank, doesn't matter, and go in there and catch fish every cast for 30 or 40 minutes. Literally. As fast as you can unhook them and throw, you'll catch another one. And big ones. Some not big, but some big ones. That's a threadfin shad spawn is what that is. Those threadfin shad will spawn on a wind-blown clay bank or a wind-blown clay point. And when those shad are up there spawning, those herons will stack up. And it's herons are territorial. How many times have you seen one heron sitting on a bank and another heron fly in there and run him off and go to squawking at him? Everybody seen that on the water? The one time a year that they'll just sit right next to each other and not fight is when the shad are spawning. So when you see 3 or 4 herons lined up, it's go time. You know what I mean? Like that's a surefire signal right there. But yeah, there's been some amazing days, and it can happen in the most random areas. I remember this one sticks out from a couple years ago, but had a couple guys that were fairly novice. They fished, but they weren't, tournament fishermen or nothing like that. And we were going to throw a frog that morning. I believe it was April. It was either late April or early May. And we were headed to throw a frog that morning. And I was running back, fixing to have to. I was starting to really pay attention because I was fixing to have to run through some trees to get back in this creek. And I'm running, and just for whatever reason, I look to my right, and there's 3 or 4 herons lined up on this. It's literally a flat, do-nothing bank that I have never once made a cast on in my life. And to this day, this is the only time I've ever made a cast on it. And this was like 2 or 3 years ago. And there's 3 or 4 herons lined up there. And so I immediately shut down, swing over, and go idling over there. And I just got up and I handed one of them a square bill crankbait and handed one of them a little swim bait. Just like these hollow bellies. We're talking about little 4.5 inch ones. And I don't think it was a hollow belly because we didn't have this hollow belly back then. But we pulled in there and one of them catch like 4-pounder on the first cast. He's like, that's the biggest bass I've ever caught. I'm like, really? You better hold on, Jack. and we sat there for about 20 minutes that morning and caught fish every single cast for the first 20 minutes. And I've never fished that stretch of bank in my life, and I've never fished it since. But them herons don't lie to you. This time of year, we're getting to that time of year where you really gotta, when you're driving around, you better be doing some of this. If there's some wind blowing on that area and you see them, that's the deal. Any questions on any of this so far? What you doing, boy? You snuck in on me over there. You sure did. How about that? Glad to see you, man.
When you see a loon going down 12, 15 foot of water, where you throw chatterbaits in that area?
In 12 to 15 foot of water. Okay, so if the folks watching at home didn't hear that, Gunny asked, what if you see loons diving in 12 to 15 foot of water? What that usually tells you is they're not up on the shallow stuff. This time of year, what those loons are doing is they're keying in on a gizzard shad spawn. Now that's going on, and that's been going on for a while. Who's heard about the big swim bait bite on the shallow points and blah 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 blah? A lot of the guys have been capitalizing on it, doing really good. Anybody heard about that out here? Not really. Okay. Yeah. So under ideal conditions, when this thing's at its best, you'll see loons on really shallow points. Now these are not points that you see the point forming. These are underwater points that'll extend out. It'll be maybe 2 or 3 foot of water, 300, 400, 500 yards off the bank. Like it really extends out there. A lot of these. Some of them are 100 yards or whatever, but these are shallow points that extend way out, stay shallow for a long time. Okay, these are the shell beds, right? That Mike's talked about a bunch. We've always talked about them. Which they're shell beds in all depths. I don't want to get caught up on the shell bed deal because it's more about the structure than it is anything else. But what happens basically, essentially, is where those points run out and make a real shallow bar, when that wind blows that plankton across the whole lake, right? That wind just drifts that plankton everywhere. Well, wherever that point runs out, that condenses the water column as you're going along. All of a sudden, the water column's this tall, this tall, this tall, and then all of a sudden the water column's this tall. Well, where that water column condenses, as that plankton comes through there, it pushes all that plankton up against that slope and up on top of that point. And the plankton gets a lot thicker in that part of the water. Well, these freshwater mussels and stuff, they can't chase plankton down. They just are stationary. So they tend to accumulate on these areas that build plankton up for them. Well, shad feed on plankton. See what I'm saying? The shells are kind of just a coincidence that they're there. It's really about that structure condensing that plankton in the water column. That's why the shad come there a lot. The shad come there to feed, but they also come there to spawn, and here's why. They spawn up on them pop parts because they want the baby shad to have a high food source in the area they're born in. So that's why they relate to those points. And when that deal's at its best is when those gizzard shad are up there spawning on top in 2 to 3 foot of water, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. But when they're up on the top of that crest and the wind's blowing in there and them gizzard shad are spawning, it's just like the wind blowing point we just talked about the threadfin, but with gizzard shad on a different point and a different bird. Now when those gizzard shad get up there, them loons will get up there and they'll get right up on top of them and push those shad down. And they'll go through there and they'll eat shad and they'll push them down. Well, there's a whole bunch of big bass that's a dinner bell ringing to. And so as those loons are up on top pushing those shad down, those bass are running up that ridge, and as they push the shad down, the bass push them back up, and they kind of work like this in unison. And that's where, when you got those big gizzard shad doing that, those big swim baits, on those shallow wind blowing points. When you spot loons, the loons are just, A, the shallow wind blowing points is the deal. That's where it's going to happen. B, the loons indicate to you it's happening now. And C, get out there with your big bait and hold on. You know? Or a Carolina rig works really good too. Like a Carolina rig with a bigger bait behind it works really good. It's like if you take like that big impact shad, that big 7-inch impact shad, that's perfect. Put that on a Carolina rig and throw it in 2 foot of water where it's real windy. And I'm talking, when I say windy, I'm talking about waves coming over your boat. Windy. And when you see them loons, throw that Carolina rig and just drag it back, and you'll feel all that gravel and shell and clunk, 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 and then tunk, get him. Yeah, that's what a lot of guys have been doing. You know, I'm so adamant about the sight fishing deal, and I love, you know, going in there and picking my big fish and targeting, that I don't do near as much of that deal as most of the guys on the lake. It's a much easier deal to take your customers out there and go, here, throw this big swim bait that anybody can throw a mile, and you throw this Carolina rig that anybody else can throw a mile, and just throw them at that shallow point right there with them loons on it. Like, as a guide, that's a way easier gig than telling somebody flipping a spot this big 35 times. You know what I mean? Like, it's a way easier. So for a lot of guides do it, and it's when it's right, it's the best home run pattern on the lake. But I'm gonna catch a big bag every day sight fishing. I'm gonna catch a good bag every day sight fishing. And so that's kind of where I just make those choices that way. That's just my choice, but it doesn't make me right, because those guys catch some crazy bags. There was several guys that busted them on that deal today. They caught them way better than I did today, you know, doing that shallow point pattern. So it's a very viable pattern. The Fish Life app has like 8 or 9 of those shallow shell bed, shallow point spots marked on it this time of year. Like, the Fish Life app, when we just updated it here last week or the beginning of April, the entire thing is basically spawning pockets that are holding spawning bass right now, and shallow shell beds that are really good when the wind blows on them. Like, that's what the whole app is. That's the 2 best patterns for sure. So, now, that was a long roundabout to get to your original question of when they're in 12 to 15 foot of water. A lot of times when you see that, the wind's not blowing real hard in that area. Is that right?
Right.
So what happens is when the wind's not blowing real hard in those areas, those shad kind of suck back. And so the bite's there, but it's not as active. And so you got to slow down a little bit. You might take a swim bait on a big jig head and kind of crawl that through there. Carolina rig, again, is another great option there, of course. Carolina rig's hard to beat, man. It's a good bait. It's a real good bait. But, you know, it's harder to get those fish to bite when that wind's not blowing and they're pulled out. And they're kind of out there a little bit in no man's land somewhat. But, man, when they get up on the top side, it's on like Donkey Kong. And what correlates really well and what you'll see, and a lot, I would say this too, there's plenty of guides sight fishing out here too. A lot of guys are doing that shallow point deal. But a lot of guys, especially on the days like what you're talking about, where maybe there's not a lot of wind and those fish pull out off the tops of those points, they scratch that. That's the best day to be able to see them. When it's sunny and calm, that's the best day as far as your visibility in the water. I actually prefer it to be a little cloudy and windy because I can still see them when other people can't. Or I feel like I can anyway. I feel like I can. But, you know, as far as with customers and all that, when it's the easiest for everybody to see them, you know, those guys, that also correlates with that other deal not being as good, so they'll go sight fishing on those days. So, but that's what's going on there. It's just, it's the shad spawn in a stagnant state, not really happening that day. And so those loons are pulling out there doing the best they can to eat. And the bass are doing the same thing. Yeah. Whoa, that's a whole nother segment there, wasn't it?
What's your idea on them, the white birds, not the herons, but like the little seagulls or little pigeon birds that you always see dive down and just smash them?
Oh, the divers. Well, there's two of those, and it's a lot like the herons versus the egrets, right?
Right.
You know, I listen to the herons, I ignore the egrets. Well, there's a bird called a tern, and then there's actual gulls. Gulls I listen to. Now, we don't have near as many of those out here. We've got terns everywhere. Gulls I actually listen to and pay attention to. When they're working bait, that tells me something's happening there. A lot of times on this lake, it can correlate to sand bass, which can lead you down a whole rabbit hole that you don't want to go down unless you want to meat hunt for some sand bass. But the terns, man, they're kind of like the egrets. They eat really small bait, and I'm trying to target bigger fish.
Yeah, I see them smacking the water all the time. I mean, just literally smacking on one.
Yeah, they go crazy. They do. They're really aggressive birds, and I've seen them dive, and I go over there, and there's no bait fish anywhere. And I'm like, and that's kind of where I started. You know, it's been a long while back now, but when I started kind of putting the pieces together as far as ignoring those terns, those smaller white birds. Does everybody know how to tell the difference between tern and a seagull? One's about yay big, and one's about yay big. And the terns, a lot of times, will have like a black head, just a little bit of like a black on the top of their head, they look darker head, and the gulls will just be white and gray.
What about them pelicans? Are they any play?
Man, you know, I don't pay any attention to them. I probably should. Here's the deal: I haven't. The pelicans used to not really be here. They are now. They are now, but they haven't always, you know, been a lot of pelicans on Lake Fork. And I've never really fished a fishery that was just had a whole bunch of pelicans like we do now.
Most of the time I just see them sitting. I don't really see them ever.
Most of the time they're sitting. Every once in a while you'll see them going down a bank, like ducking their head and then picking it up and ducking it. And I don't know what they're eating. I don't know.
Schools of
Shad and
fish,
stuff,
yeah,
little minnows and
they
stuff.
Scoop them up in their mouth.
See, and I just haven't done the research to study like what they're feeding on, what they're
But
keying
they'll eat a
on.
big fish too.
Will they? See, so I don't know. I don't know if they're keying on gizzard shit. I don't know what pelicans are doing, and so I don't know how to answer that question.
They'll eat a 2-pound bass if they get a hold of it.
Okay, pelican season just opened right now. If they're eating bass, we got to start killing some pelicans.
Especially
Texas Parks and Wildlife, open it up.
Especially 2 pounders.
Yeah, he's a tournament fish. You can tell he fishes tournaments because we got that slot limit, you know. And that 2-pounder, boy, that's right at 15 inches. That's the one. That's the money fish. Yeah, they're eating 2-pounders. We got to stop it. I agree with that too. And here's the deal: because 2-pounders turn into 10-pounders someday. So that's the deal right there. Any other questions, sir?
When do you think 6 Inch is going to come out with the new rod you was talking about here?
The Century Series, which golly, dude,
That's what I'm waiting on.
it's appropriately named. I swear to God, I was bed fishing with that rod the other day, and I promise you, I felt it breathe on it.
Really?
I know that sounds crazy, but I really think I did. That fish would come up there, and he would do this. I don't know if I felt him actually like breathing on it, but that fish would do this, but it would never open its mouth. It would just kind of, you ever seen them do that? You flip in there on the bed and you bring your bait into the bed and you shake it a little bit. That fish over here and he goes like that. But he never bit it. He never opened his mouth. But every time he went like that, like I felt it on that rod. Anyway, it's called the Century Series. I think they're coming out in May. It's either May or early June. It's right around that time. And the retail on those is going to be $249.
$249?
Yes, sir. And they're awesome.
And you like the 7.3, 7.
Well, they're all for a different application. I'm gonna get as many of them as they'll let me have when they come out. I can tell you that.
You gonna do 10% off of those two?
10% off everything on 6 Cents Fishing. Yeah, when they come out, or if you want to order anything they have now, 6centsfishing.com, and you punch in the code Your Lake Fork Guide. Got a little promo box on the checkout screen, and you get a 10% discount on anything you order from 6 Cents Fishing if you type in Your Lake Fork Guide. So yeah, that applies to rods, apparel, any big purchases. Doesn't matter. You can spend $5,000 in there; they'll give you $500 off. So wait a minute, is that 1% or 10%? I think that's 10%. I'm a fishing guy. I don't really know, but it's 10%. It's 10%. I promise you that. Good question. I'm excited about those. I've got one. I need more because they're awesome. They've got like one of those ninja handles. You know what I'm talking about? You know what a ninja handle is? Where it's not a split grit, but it's like real light ninja handle. It's not one of them big heavy cork handles. It's some type of, I don't know, some material they got from space or something. I don't know where it is. It's got that ninja handle. It looks and it feels like a katana sword whenever you hold it like this. And I just look at them bass. I'm like, yeah, that's my ninja rod's what I call it, man. It's bad something gun. It's made out of graphene. The rod, the blank, is a graphene blank. Anybody know about graphene? Anybody heard about graphene yet? There's just one or two models out there. The G rods are graphene. Well, the deal with graphene is it's stronger, so they can use less material to make the same power rod, or they can actually get it even a little bit stronger with less material than they use for graphite. So you get, like I've got a 7.7 heavy, and in my hand it feels like a 6-foot medium light. Like it just feels like nothing, but I boat flip 7-pounders with it and throw big swim baits on it. Like doesn't make sense when you first feel it. You're like, dang, that's not a 7.7 heavy, but it is. You start setting the hook on some, and it is. It's an unbelievable. That graphene, eventually, it's more expensive. You know, it's a little higher. But I think eventually graphene, as more people get it in their lineup, graphene will be the next big deal as far as fishing rod material goes. I think it should take over everything. It's a better mousetrap, you know. Any other questions?
You seen the weather forecast?
Yeah. Who's fishing tomorrow? You got a tournament tomorrow? What are you fishing tomorrow? Media? Golly, man, you boys need to be careful. It's going to be bad.
I got to. I'm second in points.
I know you've been doing good. You're second in points? Who's ahead of you?
Zach Hughes.
That sucker's eater, I tell you
I'm
what.
gonna put it on him.
You better put it on him. I want you to. I hope you do. I hope you do, because then I get to call him and talk trash to him all night. So I hope you whoop him.
Well, if my bed fish, if I can see it,
Yeah. You got some good ones lined up?
I got one
Oh, you got an over? That's
Right.
awesome.
way over.
They're out there. We had that day that we had that 11, 10, and 9. They were all 3 overs.
I had a blessed week this week. That's 3
Yeah.
of them I found. Caught 2 of them, but I wasn't touching this one.
Yeah, because you got the tournament tomorrow, yeah. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. This lake's just, we said it earlier, it's so unbelievable. You know,
But that's only 3, the 3 big ones I've seen. A lot of 2 to 5, 7.
Yeah. Yeah, it's,
When are the great big ones going to
I think a lot of them have already come and gone. You know, the deal with great big fish on beds is they don't stay very long. And they don't let you see them. A lot of them will swim off before you get a look at them. They'll be on the bed, you know, and they'll take off and you'll never see them. Then you drive by and you see that 4 or 5 pound male. If you go by and you see a 5 pound male, which is reasonably common out here, when you see a 5 pound fish on a bed by itself and nobody else anywhere in sight, and you stay there and you fish for that fish and you look at it and you never see another fish, and that fish never leaves the bed and goes and rubs on another fish, that's a male. A female is never on a bed by herself. That doesn't happen. That's like science, I think. There's a lot of those out here, and if you see him early in the process, and you fish every day like I do, you see him early in the process, and he's there for 2 weeks or 10 days, and then he's gone. Where'd the female go? She came in there at some point, but she never let you see her. These trophy 10 plus, especially the 12 and 13 plus, it's rare to see them.
You don't think they're kind of like deer, do you? Like that come in at night or something?
I think some of them probably do. I think more so than that, though, they're just real boat shy. I think they're just real boat shy. And they get
The bigger ones, I think they spawn out in the deeper water, 4 foot maybe.
That's true, because I can tell you, I can't count how many times on this lake I've been bed fishing up here where I can just barely see, and I'm looking for the bigger fish where I can just barely see, and then even further out than that, I'll see this fish go like this and roll up, and you can't catch her because she's over there dropping eggs, but that's the only time you see her, because that's the only time she's rolling up on her side and flipping around without you flipping a bait in there, and she's in water that you can be like this, and you can't see her. You can be right on top of her, and you can't see her. She's in just deep enough water where you can't see her. I think that happens a lot. I think there's a lot of boat shy with all the boat traffic these fish get on them. I think there's a lot of giant females that as soon as a boat starts heading anywhere in their direction, they just ease off where you can't see them. And they just stay out there till the boats are gone and they go back in. And maybe they go in at night because there's boats on them all day on this daggum pond sometimes, you know. But, I mean, those big fish are patient. They'll go out there. I mean, if you've ever watched them, you know, some of these bigger ones, and you see them and you watch them swim off, they'll stay out there for a long, like, as long as you're there, they'll stay. They won't come back. But then if you back off and then you come back, it takes 10 seconds and they're back on the bed. But as soon as you come in, they'll leave again. And then, so a lot of these giant, huge, crazy once-in-a-lifetime fish they're just real boat shy. So you don't see as many of them. You know, we got lucky on that day. We had, the day we had the 9, 10, 11 pounder all in one day, we just got lucky. I'm going to tell you, the 9 pounder we didn't see at first. We were actually looking at another fish that was on a bed right next to this bed, And we were trying to judge that fish, and we fished for it for a little bit. And it was kind of flighty. It wasn't acting right. It was like a 4 or 5 pound male, big male. But it just looked like it was going to take a long time to catch. And we'd been catching some bedfish pretty regular. So I'm like, well, we ain't going to waste time on that, you know. We can find a bigger one or at least a more active one that'll be easier to catch. So as I was like driving by it one last time to kind of really get my best read on it, I got real close to it, and then I turned out, and right there, I see a fish go, whoop. And I would have never seen that fish. It was on such a deep bed, and we just backed off and started flipping. Well, when I did that, I seen one, and then I seen another one. And I seen the one turn, and it looked like a decent one. And I seen the other one turn, and it was twice as big. I was like, well, that's a female. That's a big female. And so he flipped in there, and he caught the male pretty quick. And the male's like 4.5 pounds. I'm like, if she's twice as big as 4.5, I'm not good at math, but that's 9 pounds, you know. And sure enough, she was. She was 9 pounds. And then the 10 pounder, I never saw her. The 10 pounder, I told this story earlier, but you weren't here, bud. But he was fishing. He'd already caught the male. He's fishing for the female in that bed. And I just seen a swirl up by a reed head. And I just flipped my jig up there by the reed head and caught a 10 pounder. Now, the 11 pounder was totally different. She was in this much water. You could see her from halfway across the cove that we pulled into. And that was the best thing that happened to us because we stopped so far away from her that she never knew we were there. And we flipped in there. And the first cast, we perfect, got way past her, brought it into the bed, and she went like this, and then she left. And then we flipped in there again, and she came from out here and came in and went like this, and she just froze and wouldn't move. So he snatched it from her real quick. He threw it right back in there, and she went, whoop, and bit it, and he caught her. You know, like, how lucky is that? 11 and a quarter. But she never knew we were there. That's the big deal. She was so shallow, and the water was so clear in that one little corner that I saw her from so far away.
What day was that?
Monday.
That was the day I caught the 2 overs too.
Yeah.
That was an excellent day.
There was a lot of females up that day. Mm-hmm.
The second one, I actually missed my pitch and got to the right in a bush. And she just come from nowhere.
Came over and ate it.
Yeah, I had no clue. That was just a miss.
I think people waste a lot of time on big fish. I said we weren't going to talk about sight fishing. Look what we're doing. If y'all want me to shut up about sight fishing, tell me. I will. I think that a lot of people waste a lot of time on big fish, myself included in this argument right here. When a fish is ready to bite, it don't take much. And on a lake like this, and in the phase we're in right now, where there's fish kind of spawning everywhere all across the lake, it's kind of ignorant to sit there and spend 45 minutes on a fish because you're like, man, that's an 8 or 9 pounder. Yeah, and there's 3 more around the corner, and one of them will bite in 5 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, when a fish is ready to bite, you almost can't mess them up when they're really ready to bite. Now it's hard to find them big ones that are really ready to bite, but when you do, I mean, it's so easy. And we waste a lot of time. You know, I see a lot of people stop on these 3 pounders and 4 pounders, and then it takes them 30 or 40 minutes to catch them. They're like, well, if I catch a fish every 30 minutes, I'll catch 16, 18 fish today. I'm like, yeah, but you could have hunted down an 8 pounder that would have been in 5 minutes in those 30 minutes you were sitting there on that 3 pounder. You know, like, we just spend a lot of time on fish that are either already caught, especially on this lake, already caught is a big deal, or just not ready. And I do it too. I'm guilty of it, especially when I see a big one. I get locked in on, oh, man, we got to catch that big fish, you know, and I try to make it bite. When if I just keep moving, I could spend that time hunting down another one that'll bite real quick. The deal when you're going sight fishing, you got to be willing to spend the time hunting. If you spend the time hunting, it can go real good, but you got to be willing to sacrifice and understand that most of your day is going to be spent not fishing. Like, that's part of the sight fishing deal. You're going to spend the majority of your day on that trolling motor staring, and then positioning your boat, getting in the right spot to make the pitch, the right distance where you're not too close, but you can still see it a little bit. Like, the setup and the hunt is the majority of your day when you're sight fishing.
That's exactly right. I don't know how many miles of bank I ran today and only threw twice and caught 2 fish.
Yeah, if you want to be good at sight fishing, you better be ready. You better have some good batteries on your trolling motor. You better cover some water, Jack. You better cover, flat cut. I mean, thing about sight fishing, it's real funny because we'll stop on a fish, and sometimes it'll take us 15, 20, 30 minutes to catch a big fish or whatever. But I'll be in such a hurry. I'm in such a hurry, and I'm like, buzzing, going everywhere. And if I'm leaving one area going to another, I'm slamming the trolling motor down. I'm running to the seat, and we're hauling butt, and we're running through trees that I normally don't run through, and just being crazy. And then you set up on the bed fish and you just sit dead still. You know what I mean? Like it's this high-speed chaos for most of the day with these intermittent times where you just sit in one spot and go like this. It's just a weird deal. Sight fishing's weird, but God, I love it. I love it. So it's so much fun. Everybody ready to go sight fishing now? Hey man, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate every single one of you guys stayed till the end. We had a few walk in late. We're glad to have those guys as well. Thank Lake Fork Marina. Get these raffle tickets, guys. If y'all are coming by Lake Fork Marina, get those raffle tickets. Help them support a great cause, and maybe win some great prizes. What did they say they were? $5 each, or 5 for $20. Get on down here and see the fine folks at Lake Fork Marina. Thank all of you guys for coming. Thank all of you for watching. We'll see you next time right here on your Lake Fork Guide.
All right.